Hey everyone, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how I do my digital paintings. Now, usually when I do my digital paintings, I like to put a base color first on the entire drawing, and I put different colors on top using the multiply layer so that the drawing or painting will be cohesive throughout and just not feel like it's out of place or anything. What I struggle with most is trying to pick colors just by my eyes and not using like the multiply layer to make it cohesive. I'm still learning about how to choose color palettes and such, but this is all experimentation, and I think that's part of the learning process as an artist. So you live, you grow, you learn, and all of that stuff. How I usually start my digital paintings is usually I would sketch them out on my mini sketchbook, and I do it in pen so that it shows up when I take a picture. And then I upload that picture to my computer and lower the opacity so that you can see the sketch but not like have it overbearing as you color. I find this the best method for me as a beginner because I don't use Photoshop. As you can see, I use Krita, and that's because, like I said in my previous video, that I am broke, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't be able to make digital art. I recommend Krita for beginner users because it's free, so you don't have to pay like a subscription or pay money on a program that you're not sure you're gonna like very well. So you can try out Krita and see how you like it, and if you don't like it, there are plenty other free programs out there that you can try out. But for Krita on my computer, the reason why I don't sketch the drawing right there on the program instead of, just drawing it out like on my sketchbook, if that makes sense, I sketch it out first because on Krita, it is kind of slow when I zoom out. As you can see throughout this entire video, I will be zooming in most of the time. That's because I feel like I would have better control of the tool that I'm using when I'm closer up. Also, as you can see, I don't have Navigator on because I'm not quite sure if this program has it or if it's called another thing. I haven't really done too much research. I should probably do that because I'm pretty sure all programs have something similar to Navigator. Before using Krita, if you look back on my Instagram posts, which is the same as my name on YouTube, just without the spaces, you see that my beginning digital art had line art. And that's because back then, while I was in school, in high school, I was given access to Photoshop, which is kind of pretty different from what I'm doing now, because since it was school related, it was a school related class, even though I drew like a lot, it was very different from now because the tablet I use is different, the program I use is different, and I just had to adapt to what I had at the time and what I have now. So I'm gonna share the differences of my experience with tablets, programs, and how I do my art now. So like I said before, I would sketch on actual paper before taking a picture and putting it on the computer to color it. When I used to use Photoshop, I would actually sketch on the computer because it wasn't as slow as Krita. Now, even though Krita is kind of slow, It's still a pretty good program because it's free and it hardly ever crashes on me, so it's pretty good for beginners. This isn't sponsored or anything. I'm not being paid to do this. I just think genuinely that Krita is pretty good to use for beginners. So I had Photoshop back then, and it was a lot easier to use because obviously it's Photoshop. It has a pretty good reputation. But what really separated my art from then and now is the tablet I was given during school had absolutely no pressure sensitivity. And I know what you're thinking, like if you're already a digital artist and you're experimenting with stuff and you have a pressure sensitivity tablet, you would think that would drive you nuts. And trust me, I didn't know anything about it because that was how I was exposed to digital art in the first place. So I was used to not having that pressure sensitivity. So when I moved over to the tablet I have now at home, using pressure sensitivity was very difficult for me. It made my line art very shaky, and it wasn't, just the quality overall just wasn't as good as I used to do when I was in school. Hence why right now I'm mostly focusing on digital paintings instead of line art drawings. As much as I love doing line art drawings, right now I'm still trying to get used to the tablet. And what I find that's easier for me is actually just doing paintings. Even though I can sketch out a picture or like a drawing and put it on the computer and trace over that with line art, I could do that. It's still not the same as like when I used Photoshop. I don't know how to explain it, but like when I try to do line art, even with the sketch underneath it, it still does not like look the same. It's still very shaky, and it's even more frustrating for me to look back at the line art in comparison to the actual sketch. So I just prefer painting when it comes to digital media. It's just my preference. For details, I usually use the brush pen. If you can see on the right side of the screen, usually I would use that brush pen that doesn't have much pressure sensitivity. The only pressure sensitivity that it has is if you press harder, the line will get thicker. That's the only one that I use for details like that. And for my portraits, I usually use about 3 to 4 different brushes out of all of those that are available to me. I use the airbrush tool for softer surfaces such as like say clothing or maybe a bit of shading like on the face. I use the regular tablet pen that has no pressure sensitivity to put in blocks of color. I would use the brush that has only pressure sensitivity to do with like size, not like opacity, to put in like those crisp details. And I would use the 4B pencil brush to give texture to my drawing, such as say highlighter on the girl's face, or maybe if she has like say coily hair or more coily hair, it can use as that kind of texture for that too, as well as easier to add lighting for hair such as that. When I paint, on the face, when I try to choose colors, after I put down like the base colors, I like to add in details as a separate layer on top, just because so I have that foundation, and if I want to change something underneath without messing up details, I can go back in and do that. But for selecting, like say, face shades for on top of the detail, I usually pick the face color and I move the wheel to get like different colors into her face rather than just the same color, just slightly lighter or darker. With this painting, it was a little bit more difficult because I should have chosen a warmer background, because I'm usually better with warmer skin tones rather than cooler ones. So this was definitely an experiment for me. Her face color looked kind of cool, but more like neutral cool, if that makes sense. So finding colors for her was very difficult. In the beginning, if you can see, her shading is a lot lighter than like her face, and it's a lot warmer, which didn't really appeal to me too much, so I changed that later on. But for her highlight, it's again more on the neutral side because her skin's neutral. It's only natural to do that. And if you use colors like say warm, like I did for the shadow, it wouldn't look as appealing because it just doesn't match her face. So I chose more on the whiter side for her highlight because I feel like that would be better for her skin tone rather than say a yellow or something else like an orange. Just anything else besides like white I felt wouldn't be fitting. Noses are actually very difficult for me to paint and just draw in general because you know how some people have, say, same face syndrome, which is something I also kind of have as well. I have kind of like same nose syndrome, if that makes sense. I don't know, it's just very difficult to draw noses, even though there's so many different noses that exist and different ways a nose can look. The most appealing nose to me is kind of like this one. However, it can be very frustrating when you're trying to make your character a little bit more different. I also try to avoid black in my paintings as much as possible because it could be a little too harsh, and I feel like using blue with a cool toned character would just do a lot better than say just black. Sure, the eyes will pop out more if you use black, but that wasn't really the look I was trying to go for. If you want to know how I do like my eyes more like in depth with a lot more detail, you can go ahead and check out my video how to draw dramatic eyes, not traumatic, Jesus, dramatic eyes, and see if that will help you. So when I feel like I've done enough detail on top and I want to get rid of the sketch underneath, I go in with the base color and just color underneath it, if that makes sense, just to get rid of the sketch lines. To be honest, I don't know why the sketch lines still appear after like I colored over everything. It really doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but what can you do? You only work with what you got, you know? So Some of these parts are edited a little bit, like some parts are cut out because I felt like at times I would pause randomly if I get distracted by something, or I feel like I restarted on like a whole piece. I would take that out because I'm not trying to make this an hour-long video. Even though this is basically over half an hour long, I felt like it being any longer would just not be okay. I did try to use a reference for this drawing. It was a little bit difficult because the picture was very, very, very blurry, and it was difficult to try to get some of the details in it, so I tried to take my own liberties and tried to make it my own, even though it was supposed to be this certain woman. I felt like taking my own approach would be the best option. Even though she still looks somewhat like the woman in the reference I found, it's still kind of like my kind of drawing if I didn't use a reference. For the rest of this video, I think I'm just gonna leave you all to listen to some music while I paint this lady. But I'll give one more note and then you don't have to hear my voice again. For the rest of this video, you can just enjoy me painting. Is that when I do hair, it is very difficult for me to do textures and bringing life to it without making it look super sketchy, but I am trying to improve. What I do in this painting, I actually choose the color of the hair and I just go a little bit lighter to make it have multiple colors in the hair, because I don't think having just one color for hair is that appealing when it comes to drawings. I don't know, that could be just my opinion, but I try to add a few more like warmer browns and such. And I try to limit darker colors because her hair is already dark, but towards the end I will use a little darker brown for some shading behind her head. Yeah, and I think that's it for this video. I hope you enjoy, and thank you for watching.